Actually, that feels really different in an agency. And I think that's why it's, but having that understanding of their challenges, of what they're trying to achieve, of understanding how they operate, what they, the kind of conversations that they need to have, and where they've got resource and where they haven't got resource is actually really useful, because it means that we can adapt and support them much better.
Hello and welcome back to the Marketing Podcast. I'm Jodie Williams, co-founder of the Marketing Pod, and I'm here with Ros Wisdom.
Hello.
And today's episode is a very special one because it's something Ros and I both know very well. Life client side. Before Ros and I were both agency side, we were client side, which means we've sat in those internal meetings, we've navigated the many sign-off chains, and we've absolutely sent emails that annoyingly start with, just looping you in.
This is true. Many emails.
And today we're joined by the very lovely Ellie.
Hello.
Ellie has made the leap from client side into agency life not once, but twice. And we're asking Ellie a simple but slightly loaded question. Why is coming from client side actually our superpower? So let's start from the beginning, Ellie. Can you give us a very quick, say 2-minute tour of your career?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually started out, as many people do, in-house at a large corporate energy company. And I was there for sort of 12 years and moved around. And actually that was really valuable in being able to navigate different departments, understand how that size organisation works, understand the different conflicting priorities of different parts of the organisation. I then very happily joined the Marketing Pod as one of the early employees, and was at Pod for a long time before going back out, because I needed a taste of in-house again, into the construction sector for a couple of years.
We missed you.
And then couldn't resist coming back earlier this year. So yes, absolutely. It's been, and actually it's brilliant to be able to see both sides of that dimension and that relationship, and appreciate each, the pros and cons of each.
Ellie, now that you are agency side, and we are very, very happy that you are here with us at the Marketing Pod, what was the most surprising part of that move? And I've got a 2-part question. On the flip side, what immediately felt like a superpower when you came in from client side?
I think there's a lot of empathy that you bring with you. So when you've been involved within an organisation, and we know what it's like having been there. Actually, there are conflicting priorities. There can be delays in sign-off. There can be delays in approvals of strategy. There's a lot of meetings, and I can guarantee that a lot of our clients have probably got 60 to 80% of their diaries blocked out in meetings. Actually, that feels really different in an agency. And I think that's why it's, but having that understanding of their challenges, of what they're trying to achieve, of understanding how they operate, what they, the kind of conversations that they need to have, and where they've got resource and where they haven't got resource is actually really useful, because it means that we can adapt and support them much better. So that probably felt like the biggest superpower coming over back to agency from client side.
Fabulous. I'd love to dig into that a little bit deeper, if that's okay, Ellie. It's one of the things that Ros and I talk about quite a lot, is the stuff that you just kind of get instinctively once you have been client side. And, we've always talked about, and even today we talked about it, how lovely it is to win awards, and it's great for the ego. But actually, you need campaigns that deliver the results, that deliver against those objectives. So what are the things you understand now about a client's world that you possibly wouldn't get if you were a junior in an agency that hasn't been client side?
I think it's probably a much better understanding of the fact that not all of the people you interact with are marketers. So whilst in an agency you tend to always work with marketers, because we've all chosen to be in that profession, we're all really passionate about it. When you're in the client organisation, you're perhaps a relatively small number within a much bigger organisation, and many of your stakeholders either don't understand it, or they're not that passionate about it, or they've got a preconceived idea of what marketing might be. So actually it's really useful to be able to help our clients put together, for instance, as you say, it's not about the award wins, it's about the lead gen, it's about the metrics that we can report against. So I think actually our understanding of what they need to be able to communicate to their own stakeholders, whether it's to demonstrate that their efforts are succeeding or need tweaking, or whether it's demonstrating that there's a need for a particular budget. You know, we've all been there, budget rounds, and having to put together the business case for that. It's challenging because actually you're competing with a budget pot, and sometimes marketing can feel like a less strategic function unless it's delivered well or that organisation happens to prioritise it. So I think one of the things that we understand very well is the commercial imperative of marketing and helping our clients to pull that together, to demonstrate progress, to demonstrate success, and to demonstrate strategic alignment with the business objectives.
That makes total sense. That makes total sense and resonates with my experience as well. But let's flip it for a second. For your back client side, what's the biggest benefit a really good agency should bring to an in-house team?
I think there's quite a lot. So actually, you know, in-house teams can be of all different shapes and sizes. Sometimes they'll have a number of different specialisms in-house, sometimes they won't. And actually the benefit of having an agency partner is that they often, or certainly at Pod, we have different centres of excellence working together so we can deliver the specialism in a really rounded way. And we know that marketing's moving on really quickly, and we've got the time and the ability and the resource to really follow those trends, to keep pace with industry changes, to make sure that we're always delivering really well for clients. So I think that's a massive benefit that they can access through going to agency. But I think also we are really lucky that we get to work across loads of different industries, lots of different companies, and you can't see that in-house in quite the same way. You kind of risk being in a bit of an echo chamber of your industry or your organisation and its thinking and the stats that you're used to seeing, whereas actually we're able to offer that fresh perspective, which is this is what's happening in different industries. This best practice has worked really well for instance, a completely different sector, and it's really worth trying and will deliver new cut through here. Or this, you know, benchmark exists, you know, throughout B2B rather than just within industry. So again, we can help clients to shape their KPIs, to shape their strategy, to shape their metrics, and just broaden their horizons and understand what best practice might look like more widely.
Yeah, again, that's something that I would agree with. I think sometimes as well when we have clients in, just enabling to have that focus without distraction is really helpful, and then accessing all the information that you've talked about means they can really accelerate what they're intending to do with their marketing plans. They get a whole load of strategic input, so it just takes them ahead in leaps and bounds compared to what they would be able to achieve working solo or within like a smaller marketing team without all of those experts bringing those different perspectives and challenges.
I think we've also, one of the things that I've really observed, and I know you have as well, is how much a kind of break from the office is really beneficial for creative thinking. And we know that often clients love to come into Pod HQ for workshops when it comes to planning or when it comes to tackling a difficult issue, because it's really hard to do that in the office environment, particularly when you've got stakeholders trying to catch you on something or other, or there's the emails are going or whatever it might be. Whereas if they come to us, we've got a different environment, a different setup, we've got a different group of people, and we tend to bring all of our centres of excellence together. So actually, having a day or half a day out at Pod can feel like a breath of fresh air for clients, and they really appreciate that.
Yeah, I agree. And it's in the countryside too, so it's literally a breath of fresh air.
And we enjoy it as well. There's nothing better than having clients in for a workshop where we get to work through a thorny issue, or we start to plan, or we start to come up with ideas for the next campaign, or...
We do. Do you know, just listening to what you were saying then, Ellie, dead interesting, because as well as kind of getting that from an agency, getting that best practice perspective across different sectors, I think a lot of our clients or a lot of customers or B2B businesses think everybody's doing a better job than them. Am I going to get left behind? There's always that kind of worry and concern. And what I often see is actually we can give them a bit of reassurance that the problems they're facing are actually quite common. So they think they've got the worst systems. They think they've got the worst processes. They think they're not measuring or tracking stuff as well as other people. And actually, you see a commonality, don't you, across all businesses that are always, improvements can be made everywhere, but you kind of see that commonality across all businesses where there are always little bits of issues, whether it's legacy systems or embedding new systems that are across all.
Absolutely. You do start to come up with common pitfalls, but also I guess what we're able to do is, because we've seen it before, we can come with some solutions as well. So we like to try and be quite consultative and quite strategic and think about actually how can you make small steps to improve, even if the organisation is a behemoth with loads of difficult systems issues, for argument's sake? How can we start to help them make strides forwards in terms of marketing success and reporting?
Even having that conversation, that's a step forward in itself.
Yeah.
I mean, we love working with clients. I mean, we love having clients in. We love working with clients. But considering things from like maybe a more uncomfortable perspective, again, Ellie, thinking about your experience client side, what's the number one mistake agencies make that instantly damages trust and the relationship? What's the one thing that leads to like blame games and usually ends with the clients thinking, I'm going to have to fix this myself now, aren't I?
I guess there's a couple. So it's a really tricky one, but I think actually being really clear at the outset as to what's going to be delivered, how it's going to be delivered, what the timeframes look like, so that everyone's got a common understanding of what's expected. That's the number one route to success, I would say. And I think that helps remove the anxiety over what a client might get or any concern that, the agency has overpromised. That's really tricky from a client perspective if they've spoken to their stakeholders, made promises over what they're going to achieve, and then actually it doesn't quite come to fruition in the way they're expecting. So I think having those just straightforward conversations that are really open and honest is important. And I guess a red flag for me, if I was taking on a new agency, would be kind of the amount of questions they ask. So I would want them to be really curious. If they came in and we were starting a kind of a new client agency relationship and they just took a brief from me, that would really bother me. I would want them to ask questions, to make sure, to be curious, to make sure that they've interrogated my brief, that they've asked about what we're trying to achieve and perhaps come up with different ways of doing it. So I would want a more consultative approach from the outset, because I think otherwise, too frequently it's easy to get to a point of rework or a misunderstanding over the brief. And then again, you're back at the point where you haven't received quite what you wanted at the beginning.
Why do you think agencies don't do that? Because I know at Pod, Curious is one of the kind of, we've got it actually printed on our wall. Why do you think some agencies are reluctant to kind of do that extra probing?
It's difficult to say without having worked in different agencies. However, I guess some of it's to do with experience, isn't it, and just culture. So we like to think we're a more strategic marketing agency. That's where we thrive. We would start with the strategy, we would then move into execution, and that's our kind of perfect scenario. And I guess where it's a more transactional arrangement, that's probably where the curiosity and the interrogation, in the nicest way, kind of doesn't come through, and maybe the results suffer as a consequence.
Fab, thank you. So bringing this back to Pod, because obviously it's all about us. How can we make clients feel truly understood? What homework should we be doing to really understand their world? And I think, how important is it actually to respect the fact that clients will always know their world and they're kind of the stakeholder, the web of politics even better than we ever will?
It's a really important balance. So I think as an agency, we would always expect to do a certain amount of homework and make sure that we understood a bit more about that, from the externally facing materials. Where is that client driving? What does it do? An assessment of what they're communicating, what their positioning looks like, and have a quick look at the competitive environment as well. So we go into that with a certain level of understanding. And also it might be that we start to look at kind of some of the sector trends that they're facing, so that we've got a good understanding of the landscape in which they're operating, so that we're better equipped to have useful conversations with them. But I think you're completely right. We can never know exactly how things run inside their business. We are never going to be as expert on their products when we first start working together as they are. And actually, we love doing those immersion sessions, which we frequently do with clients when we first start working together. And that is so useful, because we would often ask to have a range of people from different departments and different disciplines within that session. It enables us to better understand where they've got, what their objectives are, where they're aiming at, where they think they might have a capability gap, where they've got a differentiator, where they've got a USP, any kind of things we need to know about in communication and planning. So that immersion is a really important part of getting the process running well from the very beginning of the relationship.
I think that is one of my favourite parts of the process that we do, because as you say, you get everybody hearing it from the client firsthand, all the different centres. So whether it's content PR, whoever that might be across pod, they're hearing it firsthand, but they're hearing the way it's said as well, and the passion directly from the client. But then it makes everything so much more easier, doesn't it? Because everyone hears that narrative, but it's more efficient for the client because everything hangs off one truth, essentially.
And terminology as well. I mean, you can have different businesses in the same sector that all refer to a product or a system or a process or a service in a slightly different way, and understanding, I mean, it's a classic kind of tone of voice and proposition piece actually that we're doing, is understanding how they talk about their products, services and so on, so that we're replaying it back in terms that they understand. So if we are helping them write internal decks that they can use to explain kind of what they've been working on, we're replaying terminology that their stakeholders understand.
Yeah. Fab.
And finally, what's the single most important piece of advice you'd give to agency professionals who haven't worked client side?
I'm going to not give you a single piece. I'm going to go for two. So the first one being, do a bit of homework up front and understand a little bit more about that sector before you go in, because although it's totally acceptable to go and ask lots of questions, and we should be doing that, actually taking the time to do a little bit of background research first just demonstrates a commitment to the relationship and a commitment to getting things right. So I think that's really important to just spend time getting to grips with that company, with that market, before going in and working closely with the client. And the second piece is ask those questions, be really curious, get to know the organisation, speak with the person who's appointed you or the team that's appointed you, understand who their stakeholders are, who their drivers are, what their objectives are, where the limitations lie. Bring all of that out, because actually uncovering that right at the beginning sets the tone for a really strong relationship. Making assumptions up front and uncovering issues later on just makes things harder. And and that's difficult for both sides then.
Okay, fabulous. I think that is a really good place to land. So I think the big takeaway here is probably that client-side experience gives you more empathy. Mm-hmm. Ellie, massive thank you again to you. It's been brilliant. And to everybody agency side listening, if you want to build trust faster, stop trying to impress your client and start trying to understand what their Monday mornings actually look like. Ellie, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Marketing Podcast. Be sure to check out marketingpod.com for more of the latest B2B marketing discussions.
Or if this episode has really resonated with you and you'd like to discuss this topic in more detail, please get in touch. We'd love to hear from you.